Great. Okay, welcome everyone. Really good to see you all here today, as always. And I'm really excited to be joined by Kavir, who I've known on Twitter for a while in the no-code space, and I know is a Glide wizard. I'm really pleased to be or going to be learning a lot from him today in that respect and how to get started in Glide to start building mobile apps and all that stuff. I think we're going to kind of get an introduction to Glide, get into some sort of core concepts and how we can pick them up, and then open up for questions in the second half of the workshop. So I hope that sounds all right to everyone. On that note, I shall chuck it over to you, Kavir. Thanks again for
Awesome.
being here and really excited for this one.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course.
So I'll just start sharing. Okay. You guys can see my screen, right? Yeah.
Perfectly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm Kavir. I'm here to help you get started with Glide, and my Glide journey started back in 2018-19. So just want to uh, talk about three products that I built in Glide, and explain the core concepts through them, and then definitely we can take questions. All right. So before we begin, getting deep into Glide's concepts, just want to give a quick introduction of myself. I'm a product manager by day at an early stage startup, and I'm a writer and no code maker by night. I write a weekly newsletter called The Discourse on Substack, and like Max, I'm a alum of OnDeck's No Code Fellowship, ODNC1, and an ISB alum. Um, so I started my no code journey back in 2018 when I was a founder trying to build MVPs, using my limited technical skills, and I chanced upon no code apps, and at the time there was Glide and Bubble, which were really popular back then, and I've dabbled in a lot of tools like Airtable, Zapier, Webflows, etc. So that's been my portfolio of products that I've used. But by far, my favorite has been Glide. So I'm going to talk about what I built in Glide. Yeah. So um, so these are three of the most prominent products that I worked on so far. I'll just give a brief introduction about them and dive in deeper as we go on. Um, Starting with the first one, which is an order status tracker for a professional services business that I used to run. Uh, it essentially works in a way that if you have information in Glide for each customer, it can show that information within this app to the user per user, and not everyone's information should. They can come to know the status of their orders, and they can see what's the next step and how long would it take for work to get done. So that's at a brief level of status tracker. This was built in way back in 2019. And the second product that I built last year, start of the pandemic, things are not like really good, mental health wise. So uh, April, May of 2020, I started work on Mind Health, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy app that kind of helps you identify distortions in thinking and helps you correct them, helps you correct faulty thinking or negative thinking. So this was the second, major product that I built in Glide. And then, of course, very recently, due to the second wave pandemic in India, uh, I, along with a bunch of volunteers from two product communities in India, we built this app called India COVID Resources, which was a pan-India app that kind of connected people in need of resources with suppliers. For example, if anyone needed oxygen or medicines or beds or ambulances. We kind of put all that information in one place so that they could easily access in a time of crisis. And we reached up to 150,000 MAUs, which spoke to the severity of the problem, but it also helped us understand the impact that we had through a simple Glide app and a bunch of volunteers working on a Google Sheet to verify the information. So that's a brief on that product. And just before we kind of begin, just want to get a sense of how many people have built their first Glide app over here. So if can you drop it in the chat or raise your hand? Okay? Tony has built one. All right. Okay. Max hasn't built a. All right. So okay, Priyanka. All right. So a lot of people have built something recently, and okay, awesome, awesome. Wenzi's also here. Yeah, so a lot of people, building their first Glide app and or have built it very recently. So we're going to talk about how to, get started with the basics to begin with, and talk about some of the advanced features as well that we had built. And happy to answer questions on them later. All right. So at a topic level, just going to cover the fundamentals of Glide. Going to talk about uh, the main feature that is just showcasing information through lists and details, and tracking user specific data like I showed in the example of the order status tracker, and a way to add new data using a basic form that enters into a Google Sheet, and just giving a glimpse of some of the advanced features that you could build in your own app. And it's very simple to get started from there. And just some tips on how to get started uh, building Glide apps, and also the right way to build products, the right way to get feedback, etc. So I'll touch upon that. All right, perfect. So, and feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions related to what's being discussed, but we'll definitely have a section at the end for questions. Uh, so, at a most fundamental level, Glide is a no code app builder that offers you a very simple way to build a front end and a back end. So, if you have some, understanding of technology, most apps are built like this. You have a front end developer who works on the user interface and UI elements, and then you have someone who's working on the back end, the database, where most of the information is stored. So no, Glide gives you that kind of very easy access to build apps using these two parts. And what it does is it also makes it very easy to build a backend just in Google Sheets. So that's pretty much the most salient feature that Glide started with. That hey, you have this Google Sheet of information, we'll show it in a front end in a decent layout, and very structured in that way. So uh, as you can see, this is an example of the live app that I was talking about, India COVID resources. And you can see from a front end, you have elements like a search bar, a hint to show information that's pulled in from the database or from the Google Sheet. You have a button. You have an inline list with a condition that they are one of the top cities, and you have an inline list where you list all the cities. So, and you have a floating action button that sends a WhatsApp message, and then you have tabs that arrange information in that order. So all of this through Glide is built through a drag and drop, as you might have seen if you built things in it. It's very simple to get started in this, and take live information from what's then a Google Sheet. So this at a fundamental level, uh, talks about combining this front end and back end. And now I'll dive into the examples. First one, which is mind health and showcasing information in a list and detail layout. So this is mind health. It has 5 tabs. It contains information on cognitive distortions. It contains a list of meditations and a list of emotions. All of this is taken from a Google Sheet. That's dynamic, that can change information whenever required. You can have videos, you can have audio files playing from a Google Sheet through a link, which makes it dynamic. So many of the meditations that you see on the screen are essentially linked as an audio file that you can play directly. Uh, and also in the home view, in the today view, this is an example of just showing today's cognitive distortion, and below that you have today's meditation, and that is being done through uh, just cycling through each of the cognitive distortions on a daily basis and showcasing something dynamic, when a person opens the app every day. So they get to see another piece of information there. And yeah, so this is how the app works. All right. So for the people who have not built something, I'll just talk about this. I think someone's mic is unmuted. So yeah, for people who haven't built anything, this is the most fundamental part of a Glide app, which is your lists and detail. Uh, like I gave the example of cognitive distortions. It was a list of distortions in one screen, and then as you tap into it, you get a detail page where you have flexibility to show different types of content. So you have ability to embed a YouTube video, an image, audio file, and obviously text. So this is on the right side. You see how it is laid out in a Google Sheet, where you have columns and rows very simply laid out, that okay, this is the cognitive distortion, and you have a list of distortions, you have a description for each example, image, and image is linked out through any cloud source that you can find. So I kind of listed them on Cloudinary. And then you have a bunch of sources, and then you have groups as well. So groups is how within a list you're able to make it a little more organized than how just a plain list would be. So suppose you have 20 elements. So instead of just listing all the 20 elements without any grouping, it's easier to list them according to certain categories. For example, in meditations, you have kind of listed them according to beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And I think there's a question which I can take. Can you add to multiple groups? Uh, I don't think that's possible. You're within one layout that you can add to multiple groups. For example, in this uh, column, we have it as a one-to-one mapping. So mental filtering is in only one group at this time. But you can add another group. So you can add group ones and group two, uh, where if you want to group things according to in a different list, according to a different way, then you can group it that way. Uh, I'll give you an example where, say, mental filtering can be a level 1 distortion, because it's fairly basic, that okay, you're thinking too negatively about a situation. You can have a group 2 as almost a level 1 or a beginner level distortion, but that would be only shown in a different list. Within one list, you might not be able to show two groups. So that's one point. And yeah, so this is at the most basic level what you can do in your app. If you have information about anything, like you have, for example, a phone directory, you can have or an employee directory. You can have a list of employees, and then as you tap into them, you can have details of them. So that's at a very basic level, lists and details. And yes, you can have multiple relations. Yes, so one thing can relate to uh, I can talk about that a little bit in the India COVID resources, because we had a bunch of multiple level relationships there. So I'll get into that there. All right. So lists and details, pretty straightforward, very simple to do. The second feature that I can talk about is how you can build a feature that shows information only for a specific user. So this is an example of the business that I run, which is Make My Resume. We offer resume writing services, and for each customer, we have an order that's placed for their work. And according to the different statuses, we can tell them within the app that what's happening with their current order. Is it in processing? Is it in editing? Is it almost ready? So instead of calling up or sending us a support message or email, they're able to get this information through this app directly. And we added another feature, which is tracking interviews. So if you have interviews lined up, you can just add them there, and this is all tracked per user. So I will talk about how it's done within Glide. So you might have different users log in. Uh, for example, in Shivam's example, that if you have a list of affirmations that you're doing, uh, you can have favorites per user. So I like to constantly remind myself of one specific affirmation. You can favorite it, and you can show only those favorites for that user, so that it becomes a bit more personalized for them. And similarly, they can add their own affirmation if they want to also, so that affirmation only shows to them and doesn't show to everyone else. So that's a useful way. So how do you do this within Glide is, again, you have the information in a Google Sheet per user or per customer, and you need to have something that's unique, that kind of connects what should be shown to the user on the front end and what is there in the Google Sheet. So very, very simply, again, it's for example, this is based on an email address that's common between what a user would log in with on Glide and what's there in the Google Sheet. So in this example, we have a bunch of order IDs, but you can only see, once I log in, you can only see that I can see my own information, but I can't see for any other logins. And within that, then you can see more detailed about your order ID, about order date, what is the next step, and what is the progress being made. For example, this is 1/4. And how do you do that in Glide is you add a filter that matches the person who's logged in, so the user login email address, and you match it with a column in your database, which is your email column. And there's something that you have to do within Glide to ensure that security is maintained really well, which is make that unique field a row owner. So, the email is the unique matching field. So you see this purple icon for the profile that shows that this email field is the row owner, and only that field will be matched and will show the right data. So this is, a uh, quite easy way to show user specific data that's there. And you can think of it in context of your own app that you're building, like what user specific data that I want to show uh, to them, whether it's information that they have added themselves, or it's information that you know you can, for example, if you're doing a learning course on Glide, building a learning app, you can say, okay, what profile is this person, and what have they opted in for, and I will only show those courses to this person. For example, they are a designer, So I will not show all the different courses. I'll show only design related courses to this person. So that's possible using a combination of, you know, tracking whose email is there and tracking, you know, a persona or a profile of them, like a designer in this case. All right, so that's that's for tracking user specific data. That's one feature that worked on in that app. Now we move on to India COVID resources, which is a very detailed app that we built out over time, and multiple people working on it, with me building the first version of it. uh, this is pretty much the layout of the app. We kept it very simple because in times of crisis we didn't want people to kind of figure out what's where, etc. We wanted it to be very straightforward and simple. uh, like you see, the first screen is you select your city. uh, uh, you can choose out of the top cities based on how many users were accessing information. And for each city you would have information, you would have categories within them. So helpline, ambulance, hospital, oxygen, etc. And within each category you would have information for that as well. You would have a list of ambulances in this case, and you can go one step further and get the phone number and call up directly from there. As a user you could upvote and downvote whether a resource is active or not, right? And you could also connect with a volunteer over WhatsApp through just a button that was placed. So this was essentially, the layout of the app, and we had another few tabs that were just information that we were providing.
Hey, Kavir.
And
I
yeah,
was just going to say I saw a question from Tony saying those tiles that you've got are looking pretty cool. Are those
yeah,
images or icons? And Adita agreed as well.
yeah. So these were actually images that we made. And Uh, so I made the first version. I essentially use flat icon too. So I use flat icon to find a few of those icons. And then it was really interesting that a lot of people were volunteering to help out. So we there was a designer working at one of top startups in India, uh, who I just reached out to and said, hey, can you make an icon for oxygen? So oxygen, we didn't have like a ready-made icon there, or uh, so things like that. And he said, okay, cool, I'll make these icons for you. And we stored them as images, again in Cloudinary, or any cloud-based service. Took the link, put it in Google Sheets, and it showed up there. So that's how we put these tiles in, and it looks consistent across. So it's also very it's so I'm not sure who exactly were using our app, but there may be people who are not very familiar with English, that way, but they could see icons and probably understand, that this is an ambulance. So that was really helpful, I think. Yeah. So yeah, so that's the icons that we used. And yeah, another feature that we added later on was about how anyone who's accessing our app can add a new resource to our list. And this is set up through a basic button on the home screen, like you saw, add a new resource. And according to the main sheet that we had of resources, all the fields were populated, which were category, resource, city, phone number, service name, and a date that was automatically added, who is it being added by, store that person's email. So the only thing that was required for this is having a button there, having a show form element, and adding these form inputs. So it's a very easy way to take information from your user Um, I'm again going back to the affirmation example of, like, have a quick form of, three affirmations that anyone can add using this form, and it gets added to that list. So it becomes more dynamic than you just saying, okay, these are the things that you should look at. So it becomes more personalized. And you can also think of this as an example of a habit tracking app, right? So uh, what you can do is every habit that you have, you can say, okay, add a new day, and every column becomes a new habit that you want to track. So you want to exercise, you want to you have you slept properly, or have you done your meditation for the day, etc. So you can have this as a way to do it. And yeah, and there are a lot of different ways you can set this up, and it's really helpful. And it becomes more dynamic. It becomes less of a just like you showcasing information, but you're also making it interactive for the user. So that's about adding new data. And I can tell you about another example that I built of an app that tracks. This is for my dad, who needs to take a lot of medications every day. So there is just like one add new day, form, and there's a bunch of medicines that he needs to take, and he just needs to say yes. There are check marks there. So that becomes a really easy way to provide value and solve a problem using Glide and using these form elements. So yeah, so that's about adding new data. That's one feature that I wanted to showcase as a beginner level feature from India Code Resources. And yeah, so then want to talk about some of the advanced features that we worked on, and most of them were through this you know India Code Resources app that we built. And some of it was working with people who are much more advanced than me in building things within Glide. And this example that you can see is picking up tweets from obviously Twitter that were relevant to that category. So they had relevant keywords for a particular category. For example, this is a hospital, and as you can see, there is this is as of June 8th, so it's pretty recent. And it talks about how beds are available at this hospital and this contact information. And this was being pulled through a combination of an API and Google Apps Script into another sheet, and that sheet was being pulled into the app and then just shown at the front end, like how you would do a Glide app. You would have the this is a tile view. The thing behind is a tile view. And this is a detail page where you have, okay, I put the date as the main title, and then I put the tweet. This is the tweet text, and there's a link to the tweet, and then you can open the tweet and you access the information there. So uh, yeah, so like Glide has a lot of things that you can do with it, that may not seem evident when you start off. But through Google Sheets, you can use Google Sheets formulas. You can use app script if you are sort of savvy with it, or you can use Stack Overflow to kind of just get a ready-made script, and set up some really dynamic information that's available and that can solve a problem for your user. um, Another example is of the upward and downward buttons. So we had, um, for each resource, so we had a button for whether it worked for them or whether the resource was unavailable. Because what was happening was that people were verifying these resources, and it was going out of date really soon. Because hey, you have 5 oxygen cylinders, 5 people contact you, they're gone. So they're not relevant for the sixth person that comes up. So we allowed users to actually tell us whether it worked for them or not. And we received a lot of upvotes. So, we were glad that it worked for them. Uh, but we also saw, okay, some out of date resources that were there. If they added a downvote, we had a column in Google Sheets that stored the value of the upvote. And if it went to a negative threshold, like a -3 or a -5, we would remove it from the app directly. So that's in the actions, feature of Glide. You can increment a number. You can add a +1 when you're doing something. So that's pretty interesting, use case for some of the Glide features. You have relations. You have you know multiple relations between, say, for in our example, you have three levels of relations, which a friend of mine or a team member helped set up. But having to do two levels of relations is fairly straightforward. For example, you can do between cities and resources pretty easily, but having three levels of relations is a bit advanced topic and a bit more complex. But we were able to ship this really fast by just uh, not focusing on perfection to begin with. So we didn't have these three levels to begin with. We had a city and we had resources that were grouped by category. So the idea is that depending on your context, depending on your problem that you're solving, uh, try not to focus on perfection to start with, but get things working, get things to a state where it's solving a problem, and then users will tell you that, hey, it's not clear, or it's difficult to understand, and then try to expand the scope of what you're doing. Um, yeah, so that's on relations. And then analytics tracking through actions. I talked about how you can track upwards and downwards through increment within Glide. So it's an action within Glide that you can use. And a couple of more things like role-based access control, like the example that I gave you about showing only designer courses to designers, is something that you can do as a role-based thing. uh, and that role can be this profile, or it can be an admin, or it can be someone who's a internal user versus external user. So there's a lot of things that you can do within this. And obviously Google Sheets formulas are very, very uh, important to know. uh, we used Google Sheets formula for importing data from another sheet to this sheet. And import range is one of the main formulas that you should know. It's also linked on Glide's website, uh, just to get an understanding of how import range works. You can use queries within Google Sheets. So that comes as an advanced level topic where you have one data set, but you don't want to pull in the entire thing. You want to pull in specific columns. Then you can run a query within Google Sheets that actually pulls in column A, column B, and column C and showcases that information. So a lot of things that you can think about for your own apps, in terms of what advanced features that you can use. And yeah, that's I just wanted to keep it brief. I think talked about three features that are beginner level, and talked about bunch of advanced features that you can start thinking about what to build within your app. And what I'd like to kind of leave this presentation with is a bunch of tips to get started based on my experience. So the first tip is always use templates to begin with. Uh, I feel templates is a very easy way to start getting into things versus starting from scratch. Like, you don't need to add the first element to a screen, and it might seem daunting, like a almost like a empty page, like you're writing on an empty page, versus having a template to begin with that's close enough to your use case or your problem, and then start tinkering. So this is what I've always done for all the three apps. I've always used templates, and then I've modified it. It just gives you a head start, to start building. So second step is start building and tinkering, and then start reading or watching documentation when you're stuck. So a lot of people come up to me and say that, okay, what documentation should I read or watch, to start learning this? I tell them that, okay, if you start reading and watching all this documentation, the chances of you starting soon is quite low. So start building first. Then, whenever you're stuck, okay, you know where to go. You have documentation. You start understanding, and that's my philosophy of at least how no code apps or Glide works in that way. And then a bunch of tips, general product building tips, is to build in public and ask the community for help on Twitter. Um, that's a great way to start. Twitter is one of the best places to understand this, and use communities like 100 Days of No Code to kind of understand what other people are going through, while they are building, or they can help you unblock something that you're working on. And uh, build in public so that people know what you're building on. Get feedback early and often. So the goal is not just to build a Glide app for the sake of building a Glide app. It's also to solve a problem, or provide some value in some way. So get feedback from people, DM them, hey, this is what I'm building. Can you give me feedback? So then you open the doors. Okay, they take a look at it as a user or as a builder, and give you feedback on what you're building, and that'll take you to the next step. And that's pretty much how my mind health journey also went, where I asked a bunch of people on Twitter about the app, and I got a lot of feedback saying, hey, this is great, but I don't understand it. It's too complex, so make it simple to understand. And that was a key takeaway for me, was to simplify the language, because I was aware of the concept, but other people might not have been. And share your work to create serendipity. Share it so that people find what you're building, and then say, hey, I'm also building something similar, why not team up? Or I have this problem, I'll become a customer, etc. And then just keep shipping and just keep iterating throughout. So that's one of the tips I would like to kind of leave you with. And with that, kind of open it up for questions uh, on any of the things that you spoke about. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kavita. That was a really, really good 101 into Glide. As someone that hasn't actually used Glide before, that was super useful. So thanks for sharing that. Cool. Yeah, let's just open up for questions then. As it's quite a small group, we can just kind of come off mute and share away, or if you can't, then just pop the questions in the chat, and we'll get to them. So who would like? I saw, Tony, you mentioned something about Stripe earlier. Feel free to go for that.
I've been trying to hack together how to get like Stripe Connect to work. They don't really have they don't have it built into Glide yet. And I'm just trying to, like, when I sign up a user, they can go in and they can make a thing in Stripe Connect so that they can get paid when they come. Like, I thought Stripe could just handle that all on their own, but they need to like send information back. I didn't know if anybody had, got it to work, because I'm going to be hacking that together over the next couple of days to try and come up with some sort of solution. But if someone has a pre-built one that I can use, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. That's an interesting problem, and something that's coming at the top of my head would be, and other people can chime in, is that you have this external thing of Stripe Connect, and you might have APIs for Stripe Connect, or you might have a Zapier connection, for example. Once a payment has gone through, if you can trigger a Zap that adds some information to this Google Sheet for this user, based on their email address, then you can kind of add 2 plus 2 together and allow them to access the next step of this whole journey. You can unlock something for them. I mean, that's just something that I kind of thought of.
Yeah, it's on the other side. It's actually signing someone up so that, like, once the payment's made, so they have to sign up. Stripe sends information back to the API. So I'm thinking of like using an Integromat webhook to record it into the Google Sheet, because they have to have that authorization code to come together. And that's where I'm stuck, because like that's the redirect thing. I'm worried that they're going to Stripe is going to try and send them to not my app, but instead to that webhook, where
Right.
that's my stuck spot, because there isn't a way to open up my Glide app to its own API, if that makes sense. Unless someone knows how to do that. I'm gonna add an API.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whether Glide has any native payment offering. Let me see. They do?
No, I mean, they just have
There's
a connection with Stripe, but that's the only option that there is. It works quite well, though, for the limited times that I've tried.
Getting the money is not the problem, fortunately for me. Yeah, the Stripe button works, like the buy button that they have, and connecting that into Stripe, that part works. But I then need to like move that payment to someone who's actually like to another person. So yeah, that's where I'm. That getting those people onboarded via a Glide app is where I'm stuck. Like doing that two-sided marketplace thing, which Glide seems to be not as great on right now. Naturally, I'm trying to build it on Glide.
Have you tried talking to the team directly? The Glide
Stripe or Glide? I've gone through like the community and stuff, and they've like it's a feature request, and that's kind of where you get like, hey, we like it's a well asked for question that you just haven't built that functionality yet. So I'm trying to hack together something, like make a external webhook on Integromat that would record it to that Google Sheet.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
We can go on to other questions so we don't get stuck down this rabbit hole.
It's a head scratcher. Cool. I just seen Kelly, as a designer herself, ask about how customizable is a Glide for design.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as a designer, it's not very customizable because you have building blocks that you can integrate within your app that kind of solve the problem. And it has also a very limited number of fonts that you can use. So it's a system font or a modern font or a serif font. So if you're a designer, you might be a little let down, by what's on offer. And I worked with people who were very design conscious, and you were asking for things like, can we change this? Can we change that? And I was like, no. So in that way, it's a bit inflexible, but I think it still serves the purpose, because that kind of since it has a fixed, it has like accent colors that you can use. You can't use multicolor buttons, for example. So it becomes a bit more standardized and a bit more, consistent that way, where it doesn't leave it up to the end user to, mess around with. So in that way, it does work consistency wise. There are ways in which you can kind of move around what Glide has from a design aspect, is adding more images in line. So you can do some of your branding or design work outside and add images within the app that show up. So then it becomes a bit more unique or branded in that sense. So I think that would be my recommendation.
A second question, somewhat related. Does it have also a web app portal, or can you view the app on? You can. Okay.
Yes, it's a paid
on the Pro
version.
plan.
Yeah, it's on the Pro plan. You get a desktop view or a tablet view, but sometimes it doesn't work as well. It might just be a mobile view that's kind of expanded that way, unless you I think I asked the Glide team about this also. Unless the home screen of your app is a list view, and then you have a detail view next to it. So you get two parallel, views. You have a list view and a detail view. But if you have um, a home screen that's a bit more mixed in terms of elements, it'll just be an expanded mobile view in that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Awesome. We've got one from Adita. I know he's looking at kind of creating a podcasting sort of app or studio in Glide. I think that's where his question's coming from. But I guess what can you embed in Glide?
Yeah. So when it comes to embed, I showed the example of a YouTube video that you can embed that works pretty seamlessly. So you can start playing, the video within the app itself. You can also embed audio files. If you're podcasting, in fact, Glide has a podcasting template app that you might, you can check it out. I'm just trying to see if I can pull up something and show you also. Yeah. So you have a Glide, you have a podcasting template app that has a native audio element that shows up, but that audio element is not that great because you can't save states. So suppose someone's viewed 20 seconds of something, you can't save that for the next time. It's just I think it's just an HTML5 audio player. That's one thing. I haven't tried any different embeds like SoundCloud, for example, that might work for podcasting a little better. But yeah, anyone else has used it can talk about it, and I can also share what I've built within Mindhand. Yeah. So this is the player.
Yeah.
Within the meditation app, but it doesn't save the state. So once you go back to it, then it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's on the roadmap at all, Kavir, or is that kind of not spoken about yet?
No, I don't think they've kind of focused on that yet.
Sure. Good to know.
Yeah, you have audio, video, and you have a web view, but I don't know. That's again linking out, and whether you can save state in that you can probably check.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Cool. Has anyone got any more questions for Kavir before we wrap up? I can't see any more in the chat. Yeah, I guess just one from me, Kavir. So I know you mentioned earlier around like the first like 7 steps of starting in Glide. If I was only to do one of those, what would it be? If I was literally just getting started?
Yeah, I think you'd still need to do a couple, which would be take a template and start tinkering, right? I think that's the best way to start. So if you're building a podcasting app, don't start from scratch. Use a template. There are a lot of free templates available. Start tinkering, see whether it works for you or not, and you will know whether it works for you within a day. So that's the benefit of Glide, that it gives you that immediate feedback, and there's a very low learning curve. So within a day, you'll be able to figure out whether this works for you or not, and then you can invest more time in reading documentation or watching videos, etc.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this workshop, Kavir. Been really insightful, and it gives people a nice 101 to get going in this really awesome no-code app builder. So thanks again for your time and your wisdom and your insights that you've shared today. The workshop is going to be shared today or tomorrow with the rest of the community. Just wondered if there's any final words you wanted to kind of close this session with before we wrap up.
Yeah. Just before that, I think I see another question from
Oh,
Tony
sure.
that we can talk
Yeah,
about.
of course.
And so this was a wide adoption of uh, one of the COVID resources app. What was the need? And since Glide is a progressive app, how do you cross the gap that people can't find your app in the app store? Yeah, so this was the great question. I'll answer it in two parts. Um, so the wide adoption for what we built was pretty much built on the community that I worked with. Um, we didn't really advertise. We didn't really do much, but we kind of started from Twitter. We had two communities coming together. So that's a great lesson for me also when it comes to building apps for myself that, hey, don't try to do it all by yourself. Use a community's influence to get distribution, get adoption in that way. And once it was out, and use every method of distribution. So Twitter is one. I sent it to my alumni email list, which started getting shared that way. It started getting shared in WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, and I could have also seeded that. I could have started sharing there. I think the just general need was so much that people were finding value in what all of us were building, and sharing that with people in need. And so it had that kind of organic growth in that sense. So uh, and it was only link based, right? So it's a very low friction way to kind of use a product like this. So instead of downloading an app or going to an app store, searching and finding it out, this just spread through links in probably chats and on Twitter, etc. So that's how you don't need to focus on an app store for discovery, but if you can distribute it through your own channels, that's pretty much the best way. And yeah, so that kind of answers your I hope that answers your question. And yeah, so final thoughts. So yeah, thanks for having me, Max. This was a great thing. So I love talking about building stuff in Glide and continuing to do so, and kind of helping out people in their journey, either as a beginner or intermediate or at an advanced level. And always happy to help out. I'm on Twitter at Kavir Casey, and you can DM me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to help out kind of with any problems that you have.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Thanks so much again, Kavir. Have amazing weeks, everyone. And speak soon. Catch you all on Twitter and Slack. Yeah, bye, everyone. Bye, bye, bye.
Awesome. Bye.
Yeah, cheers. Bye, bye.